Our next speaker is Evan Mason, who will be looking at the New York City row house, specifically its backyard and the potential impact it has on the environment. Evan will be making a case for the preservation and protection of these open spaces, and in doing so, show how preservation and sustainability are not necessarily mutually exclusive objectives. As founder of Sustainable Yards, Evan Mason has advocated for the preservation of residential open space in New York City, especially yard space that is adjacent to historic buildings. Evan focuses her efforts on a three-tiered platform, blending education, research, and policy aimed at protecting the 53,000 acres of residential open space that remains in the city today. Working with City Council members Brewer and Lander, she was successful in advancing a City Council bill which was introduced to regulate the installation of impermeable surfaces in residential yards, including row house backyards. Always looking to bridge the chasm between the fields of historic preservation and the environment, Evan connected the New York City Department of Health with Goddard Riverside, a local green jobs program on various urban greening projects. She has also piloted projects with the New York City Soil and Water Conservation District to enhance stormwater management of an urban schoolyard, and has spearheaded a landscape seminar with the Horticultural Society and American Society of Landscape Design Architects to highlight the importance of, quote, greening the ground and enhancing small pockets of urban open space. Evan has spoken at several conferences on preservation and urban greening projects, including the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association, Million Trees NYC Parks Conference, Council on New York Cooperatives and Condominiums, and Green Home NYC. Her work has also been featured on Newsweek, WNYC's The Brian Lehrer Show, The West Side Spirit, DNA Info, and Columbia and Gotham Gazette. In 1996, Evan founded Deco Works Limited, an interior design firm which specializes in sustainable retrofits of historic apartments and row houses, bringing her interior design experience and interest in sustainability together so that clients can enjoy traditional aesthetic design in well-insulated, comfortable environments without sacrificing historic windows and other historic detailing. She has a master's in urban planning from Hunter College and a master's in social science from Bryn Mawr College, and is currently serving as a senior fellow at Hunter's Center for Community Planning and Development. I bring you Evan.
So first, I want to say that last night Charles Birnbaum gave a terrific opening night reception talk, and he asked the question, how do we measure success? And my answer to that is to try to quantify the benefits of open spaces, and specifically I'm going to talk about residential open spaces that sit behind row houses. But I'm not only concerned about those spaces, I'm really concerned about the unrecognized and overlooked benefits of all the residential yard space there is in the city. But today, I'm going to talk about my study on the environmental benefits of residential open space. Again, thanks to Charles Birnbaum, I get to show this next slide. How do I do this? Is it coming? There we go. That's my next slide. Because, should I do that again? Because Charles Birnbaum showed a picture of a beautiful woman, and he said that bone structure and landscape architecture have a lot in common. So if he can do that, I can do this. So, and my point here is that the residential backyards are the muscle structure, the core of a block, and the buildings are the arms, maybe Michelle Obama type arms. And another point that he made that I very much agree with is that preservationists, in my view, need to join with environmentalists, affordable housing advocates, and that we're not going to get very far if we're isolated. And we're not going to agree on everything. We never will. I don't agree all the time with my closest family members. That we don't agree always, among ourselves. But we've got to get a place at the sustainability table. So this is a vernacular architecture, and obviously the use it has changed and will continue to change. And here I just want to sort of point out the Landmarks Law is 1965. The Clean Water and Clean Air Acts followed in 1970 and then have been amended a couple of times. The Landmarks Law has not been amended. And I just wanted to point out that in the Landmarks Law itself, it talks about viewshed, it talks about landscape. It never said we were only going to be concerned with that you can see from the street. And thanks to Google Earth and other mapping, GIS mapping, you can start to see the spaces behind row houses that we really couldn't see before. But unfortunately, the limitations of mapping makes it so that you really don't see how the backyards are treated. If it's all concrete or if it's all soil, in many cases you don't know the difference from a Google Earth imagery because of the shading of the buildings and the trees. So that's just sort of a fact of the matter. So I decided to launch a study on a row house block. I didn't have funding for more, and with the help of some CUNY students, we actually went into the backyards and we measured how much permeable space, how much, what the acreage was, what kinds of trees were there, and I'll talk about that later. Because as I say, you can't see it from mapping. So going back to my dog, or not my dog, but a dog that I got on the internet, I'm trying to get. I have started to see the city myself through different lenses. I've started to see the front areaway as not just an inconvenient necessity to get from the sidewalk into a building. I've started to see these even front areaways as little opportunities to green the ground. You don't have to have 100% of those little areaways devoted to concrete and garbage. You can put chairs and tables. You can put little shrubs. You can put planters on top of garbage bins. There's a lot of open space here that we just sort of don't see. So we need those new glasses. And again, I think Gregory said this in the introduction, we did a study with CUNY Institute for Sustainable Cities to actually map and quantify how much open space there is how much residential open space there is in the city. And it's a quarter of the city's land mass. It's 62 times the size of Central Park. Of course, not all of that is row house backyards, and there are a lot of different building configurations that are adjacent to open space, but this is important space that is just being overlooked. It falls through the cracks between the public and the private, and therefore it's very difficult to get funding to research and study and really do some analysis of what the benefits could be. Here is a map that CUNY did of the residential open space, and I have it broken down by borough as well. So what are the environmental benefits? They include stormwater benefits, greenhouse gases, a reduction of urban heat island, the temperature difference, habitat, and let's see, and this is why we should care. While many times we think of backyards as being something that's only enjoyed by the person who is lucky enough to get access to it, we all breathe the city air. We all benefit from this open space. And without this open space, or if it were all paved over, we would have a much dirtier, much less pleasant environment. So Newsweek did an article, not an article, a back page sort of spread, where they talked about the specifics. 27 billion gallons of water gets treated by our water treatment system. If we didn't have the backyards, the water would go directly into the storm drains, and it would be a lot more water that we'd have to treat. I'm going to get into that. So here are there's two slides. We don't know how many acres of row house backyards there are, although I think that's something that should be funded, and we should find that out. But we know that 58% of our building stock is pre-World War II, and we know a significant portion of our apartment units are 67% are small buildings. So you might figure that some significant percentage of our open space is related to row houses. Climate change. We last year in 2011 we had over 70 inches of rain, and all the calculations that New York City Department of Environmental DEP is based on 45.1, I think, inches of rain a year. So because of climate change, where we're having more storms and heavier storms, it puts an incredible burden on our aging water treatment system. So on the left here, this is a combined sewer overflow. It's kind of, I never thought when I was little I was going to be studying toilets, where the toilet water goes. That's not what I thought I was going to be interested in, but I'm really fascinated in it. Basically what happens, New York City, as well as Philadelphia, Washington, San Francisco, Chicago, many older cities, the toilet water and the rainwater all find its way to the same place. They go into the sewer pipes, they go out to the treatment plants, and if those treatment plants are overwhelmed because of the increased population, increased rain, or too much concrete, which is the big bugaboo here, it overflows backed up into untreated into our waterways. The picture on the right is just the fire on the Upper West Side. I guess it was last summer, and you can see, and that backed up. Untreated. That treatment center went down, and we had a lot of untreated water going into the Hudson. I won't get into it now, but there are other benefits, psychological benefits, health benefits, and property values, and just a general enhancement of quality of life in the city. There's also, I've done some research, which I won't get into, but there's more international literature on documenting and studying the impact of removal of garden space and replaced by parking lots and concrete. That's on the right here is the Gowanus Overflow, and on the left is the Gowanus. And I put this in here because you can see how many row houses there are. If I would like to be able to do an overlay map of the Gowanus sewer shed and the row house backyards to see how much water those soiled backyards actually absorb and save going into the Gowanus. I think that would be, it's a Superfund site, so it's important. So running through my specific study, I studied one block. It's about 9/10 of an acre. It's about 35% permeable. It's in Manhattan. I imagine some Brooklyn blocks may be less developed or less concreted. This is a computer modeling that Franco Montalto from Drexel did for me. He's one of the top hydrologists that does work in the city. And what this shows is that 1.5 million gallons are diverted from the water treatment system based on that particular block that I studied. So if we were to set a goal, say we had a neighborhood block project and we were going to increase our unpaved open space, and say our goal was to increase that to 50%, you can see there how much water would be diverted from the water treatment system. And there are also dollars associated with this because treating water costs money, the city money. New York City Parks also was nice enough, Jackie Liu was nice enough to help me identify every tree on the block, both the interior and the exterior. And the interesting, and we were talking a little bit about this in the morning session, the diversity. The inner block trees are not as environmentally valuable as the trees on the street, but because these are the ones on the street, because the ones on the street were planted specifically by New York City Parks for the environmental value, whereas the ones in the interior range from weeds, essentially, to American holly, which has quite a significant environmental benefit. But my point is that the diversity of the species is good for the environment. We can't get into it now, but the landscape architects in the group know a lot more about this than I do. But not every tree, people don't want big canopy trees in their backyards necessarily because they're shady already and they want light and air. So I think there needs to be more work on the kinds of trees and shrubs that will survive in shaded spaces and thrive, and also don't give too much shade. So the quick rundown is the donut in this particular study block is 35% permeable. It's about 9/10 of an acre. That doesn't include the front areaways. And it diverts about 1.5 million gallons a year. Because at the New York City parks, when they did the tree analysis, they ran those specific trees into a computer modeling system called Stratum. And they actually came out with cost-benefit analyses that talks about carbon sequestration, the air quality improvements, stored carbon. I mean, I have spreadsheets that are quite in-depth. And also, it brings it into a dollar. They bring it into a dollar figure. It's about $5,000 a year of annual benefits. What's kind of interesting about that is when the computer modeling was done, it was done for public trees, and it factored in the cost of maintaining those public trees. Whereas in my part of the study, because the cost is borne by the private property owner, but the benefits are realized by everybody. So the diversity, part of the fun part about doing this block study is that I got to talk to people on the block, and I got to learn things about social history. The ash tree blight of the 80s, I saw evidence of the early gardens, the early 20th century formal garden movement that Andrew Dolkar talks about in his book. I see I have a typo in there. Artifacts with one T. And we also saw, I saw how people used artifacts from their buildings, or cornice, or the cobblestone from the street, and they integrated that into the design of their little back areas. Quickly, Gregory mentioned I was able to get introduced into City Council a bill that basically says that you have to go to the DOB to get permission to install concrete. It's not a very, it doesn't have a lot of criteria, and without getting into all the details now, I really recommend all preservationists to get involved and pay attention to the new Green Codes proposals, the new DEP guidelines. We need a seat at that table. I think on the whole, they're very, very good recommendations, but they overlook small parcels of residential over land. They cap it at either 5,000 or 1,000 square feet. They don't pay attention to the cumulative environmental benefits of these spaces. And there are other there are other recommendations that were just passed that have to do with putting stucco on the outside of historic buildings, or buildings that are not yet designated for their environmental benefit. If we don't have a seat at the table, we won't have an input. So what can you do? What I've been focusing on enacting legislation, I'm still working with Council Member Brewer's office on introducing another bill with more criteria. And also I'd like to see incentives to encourage people to remove concrete. Could be a water reduction, or it could be a tax abatement similar to the Green Roof tax abatement program. And if you are, and I really think that LPC should really go back to the original mission to look at the impact of landscapes and view sheds. And in your little handout, so I don't have to take the time here, you have some things that you can do, and please get in touch with me, ask me questions. I'd love input, I'd love suggestions. And I think to finish up, I do think it's important to really tease out these environmental benefits and to see how the benefits and preservation, our preservation mission can work hand in glove and to study, like the Gowanus sewer shed. We should know how many millions of gallons of water those row house backyards in the Gowanus sewer shed, how much that saves the Gowanus. It's a super fund. It's got a lot of money, and nobody's studying this, and I think it's important that we do so. Thank you very much.